Hello, and welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. I'm Dr. Christine Baker, and I'll be your host. So I am wondering if you have ever said yes when a part of you or all of you wanted to say no, or maybe you found yourself so wrapped up in managing someone else's emotional experience that you kind of forgot or weren't even aware of your own. Or maybe in certain relationships, you notice that you have this pattern of just disappearing. Like you are so agreeable, accommodating, flexible. Somewhere in all of that, you lose track of yourself completely, not even knowing what your opinion would be on things. If that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this. You are not too nice. You are not a pushover. You are not weak. You're not a doormat. Your body learned a very sophisticated strategy called the Fawn Response. And today we're going to talk about exactly what that means, why it lives in your nervous system to begin with, and most importantly, I'm going to walk you through a 3-part somatic practice to help your body find its way back to you. So, for those of you that are new here, I'd love to take a second and just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I've been a licensed professional counselor for 13 years, specializing in trauma recovery. I am also a somatic experiencing practitioner, which just means that I am a person that believes strongly that trauma does not just impact our emotions and our minds, but it leaves a lasting imprint on our bodies, specifically our nervous systems. And if that's the case, we have to bring the body alongside the recovery journey to actually heal. And that is the foundation of why this podcast started to begin with. My hope was I wanted to have an accessible resource that offered people practical body-based tools that they could start to integrate into their daily life based on whatever symptoms they were dealing with. And so you'll notice in the podcast episode list, each episode is really a mental health symptom. And so you can kind of scroll through, find something that applies to you, listen, and then take that somatic skill and start to create a rhythm of that practice in your life until nervous system care becomes as normal as brushing your teeth. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are currently watching or listening. All of those little clicks really do help other people find this information, and I so appreciate it. Also, as a side note, listening to a podcast about having a podcast, which was weird, but one of the things that they said on there was that it can be really great to actually read out some of the 5-star reviews that you get on your podcast apps, just so that you can say thank you to the people who took the time to actually write that. And so I thought that was a really beautiful idea. And so I wanted to start doing that here kind of in our intro time. So the very first review that we got was from the Macchiato family, and the title is Perfect Place to Start. And it says, Christine makes it easy to understand somatic wellness in the body and gives you a place to start implementing strategies right away. So I know who probably wrote this in the Macchiato family, and I just want to say thank you so much for your kind review. And we will read our next one from Christy next week. And if you haven't written one yet, please do, because I would love to read yours out on the podcast and give you a thank you as well. Okay, let's jump into the Fawn response. So the term fawn was coined by a therapist who specializes in complex trauma named Pete Walker. And it describes something that I see in my office constantly, and that is people who have learned, usually very early on in life, that the safest way to navigate a relationship is to just make sure that the other person is comfortable, to smooth things over or to shrink when they need to, ultimately becoming whatever the room needs them to be in the moment. And from the outside, fawning can look very kind. It can look very generous, very flexible, very emotionally intelligent. You know, people who fawn are often described as very easygoing, servant-hearted, low maintenance, great listeners, right? But on the inside, it's exhausting because you are constantly scanning, reading the room, reading the other person's experience, adjusting, accommodating, appeasing. And somewhere in all of that scanning, your own needs, your own feelings, your own sense of self just goes offline. You know, I actually had a member of the Somatic Wellness Collective share something recently about the Fawn response. She told me about how, you know, she has spent 40 years thinking, you know, I'm just a kind person. This is one of my spiritual gifts is, you know, I'm very generous. And it wasn't until she read about and understood the fawn response. We actually have an entire month dedicated to just the fawn response in SWC. Until she understood fawn as a nervous system response, she had never once in her adult life said no without her heart pounding out of her chest. And she just had this awareness. This is not just kindness. There is a level of survival happening here. And that realization changed everything for her. And so what I want you to understand is that fawning is not a character flaw. It's not people pleasing almost as a personality trait. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do to keep you safe. And when we understand it that way as a body response, we can actually start to work with it instead of just feeling ashamed by it. So let's talk for a second about the science of what is happening in your nervous system when you fawn, because that part is genuinely fascinating. So thanks to Dr. Stephen Porges and polyvagal theory and the beautiful work that Deb Dana has done translating it into everyday language, we understand that the nervous system does not just go into two gears, on and off, sympathetic, parasympathetic. It actually operates across three distinct states. So we've got the ventral vagal state. That's our safe and social, calm, connected, present place. We've got sympathetic, which is our fight, flight, mobilizing energy state. That's let's get ready to jump into action because there's a threat. And then we've got our dorsal vagal state, which is our oldest, deepest survival circuit. It slows everything down. It disconnects us. It creates that kind of foggy, flat, dissociated feeling. Now, here is where fawn gets really interesting. Fawn is what researchers call a blended state. So when you fawn, your sympathetic nervous system and your dorsal vagal system are actually activated at the same time. So think about that for a second. It would be like pressing your foot all the way down on the gas and all the way down on the brake at the same time. That sympathetic kind of fight-flight energy is very much online, but instead of running away from the threat, you're running toward the other person. It's generating this almost frantic outward energy, scanning their face, tracking their mood, rushing to soothe or fix or manage or accommodate. Your body is working incredibly hard. It is hyper-vigilant. And anyone who has struggled with people-pleasing or fawning in the past knows this feeling. And at the exact same time, your dorsal vagal system, that freeze circuit, is applied inward. It is suppressing your own emotional expression. It's disconnecting you from your own needs, your own feelings, your own sense of what you want to do. Deb Dana actually describes one of the hallmark feelings of being in dorsal vagal activation is a sense of disappearing. And I think every person who has fawned knows exactly what that feels like. You can be in the middle of a conversation and suddenly realize that you have been so focused on the other person that you have lost the signal to yourself. So in other words, you are over-functioning towards others and under-functioning towards yourself. That is the fawn response. So now that we understand it as a nervous system state, not as a choice or character flaw, right? We can work with it somatically. So I want to walk you through a 3-part practice where we are really going to work on returning to yourself. And each of the 3 parts is addressing one layer of what is happening in your body when you fawn. So if you have space and time to try this now, you could find a comfortable position to get started. If not, you can just listen and then come back to this podcast when you do have some space and time to give the practice a shot. So for those of you that are joining me, you can be seated, standing, wherever you are, just getting comfortable, maybe taking a breath, noticing that you're here, noticing the chair supporting you or the floor under your feet. And for this first part of the exercise, we are going to work with that sympathetic activation. Remember, fawning involves real sympathetic activation that's being redirected outward towards someone else instead of being allowed to move through your body. So in this first part, we're going to give that energy somewhere to go. So what I'd love to invite you to do is to just begin walking in place. So if you're standing, you could actually walk in place. If you're sitting, you can almost just pick your feet up like you're walking in place. Okay, so nothing dramatic, just a gentle, easy march, lifting one foot, then the other. Maybe letting your arms swing naturally if that feels comfortable. And as you walk, I want you to set a gentle intention inside that this energy, this flight energy, is mine. It's not directed at anyone else's comfort. It's not organized around someone else's mood. It's just my own body moving on my own behalf. And so what I'd love to invite you to do is just continue walking for about 30, 45 seconds and just notice what happens. You may feel a little warmth in your legs. You might notice that your breath begins to soften or deepen. You might feel something settle or loosen. There's no right answer here. You're just giving your nervous system permission to move the energy that fawning taught you to redirect outward. So easy and gentle. Whenever you're ready, you can kind of come back to stillness slowly. Take a breath. Notice how your feet feel on the floor right now. And then we're going to come to this second layer, this dorsal freeze that was applied inward to my own experience, the part of fawning when you or I went offline. So what I want to invite here is for you to sit or stand tall, not rigid, but just kind of lengthened, like your spine just got maybe an inch or two more, kind of letting your spine have a little dignity, right? And then if you feel comfortable, I'd love to invite you to place a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly and just hold. You don't have to press down. You don't have to pat. Just noticing the weight and warmth of your hands there supporting you. And then you can take a breath and just ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Not what do you think you should feel, not what does Jane want you to feel, but what am I actually feeling right now? And as you sit with that question, still being connected to your hand on your chest, hand on your belly, you might get an answer of an emotion or a sensation. You might just get numbness apart from your hand's warmth. Whatever is there, we're just letting it be, and we're letting it be acknowledged. We're letting that part of us know that we want to see it and that we want to be with it. And just knowing that whatever came up, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. Just that small act of turning inward begins to thaw that freeze. And then for this last part, we're going to try to land back into our ventral vagal state, that sense of safety that fawn may have pulled you away from. And so if you'd like, you can keep your hands supporting your core and just take a slow breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Maybe letting that exhale be a little longer than the inhale, almost letting that out breath be a little bit of release, whatever it was that you were holding for other people. And then I want you to see if you can notice 3 things that are true about your body right now without judgment. Okay, these are not judgmental things. These are just, I am wearing ankle socks and I can feel them on my ankles. Or I have 3 necklaces on, and if I touch them, I can feel the different textures of them in my hands. Or it is cold in my office and I can feel the coolness on my skin. It doesn't have to be anything with meaning. It's just, what are 3 things that are true about me right now? So just take a second to find those. And then before we close, if it feels right, I'd love for you to just say either out loud or in your mind, I am here and I matter. And just notice what happens inside when you do that. Maybe offer yourself one more breath with that extended exhale, letting your face soften, letting yourself arrive in your own body, not on anyone else's behalf, without needing to manage anyone else right now, right? Thank you for your practice. All right. Well, I hope this episode has been helpful for you. Next week, we are going to talk about something very different, which is why I think procrastination can actually be a protective nervous system response and how you might connect to productivity in a way that's actually embodied instead of just shaming yourself into doing your checklist. So if this episode has been supportive to you, or you think that next week's episode will be, I'd love to just offer that gentle reminder again to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening. I really do appreciate it. And if you are ready to go deeper than weekly podcast episodes, I'd love to take a second and just tell you about the Somatic Wellness Collective. SWC is my online membership community where we take this work further together. You get on-demand somatic classes, live monthly sessions, including a monthly Q&A, and a community of people where we are truly applying this learning to everyday life. Because here's what I've learned in doing this work. Understanding your nervous system is powerful, but doing it in community is where the real change happens. So if you are interested in that, check the link in the show notes below. And thank you again so much for being here. And in closing, just a reminder, your body has innate wisdom. All we have to do is learn how to listen to it. And that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next week.